What if I told you that every breath you take tonight carries within it the memory of a moment 200,000 years ago when a small band of humans stood at the very edge of extinction, yet somehow found the wisdom to survive against impossible odds? Not only happened, but it could change how you see your own resilience forever. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You are lying beneath a canopy of stars that have watched over humanity for millennia. These same constellations once guided our ancestors through the darkest nights of the Stone Age, when survival meant reading the subtle language of nature written in wind patterns, animal tracks, and the gentle pulse of seasonal change. But here's the twist scientists have been piecing together from fragments of bone, ancient DNA, and whispered stories carved in stone. Our ancestors didn't just survive through brute strength or lucky chance. They developed an intricate web of knowledge so sophisticated, so beautifully adapted to the rhythms of Earth, that modern science is only now beginning to understand its elegant complexity. In the next 3 hours, you'll drift into calm while uncovering the hidden truths of how humans not only survived the Stone Age, but learned to thrive in harmony with forces far greater than themselves. This isn't just ancient history, this is your story, written across the fabric of time itself, living on in the very cells of your body as you settle into rest tonight. If you love journeys like this video, subscribe and comment your country and what time you're listening. Let's discover together how the wisdom of our ancestors flows through you still, like a gentle river carrying you toward peaceful sleep. Picture, if you will, a world wrapped in ice. Not the gentle frost that kisses your window on winter mornings, but vast sheets of frozen water stretching across continents like sleeping giants. This was Earth 70,000 years ago, during what scientists call the Toba volcanic winter, a catastrophic eruption that painted the sky ash-grey for years and dropped global temperatures so dramatically that humanity nearly vanished entirely. Recent genetic studies reveal something that still sends shivers through the halls of evolutionary biology. At this moment in time, there were perhaps only a few thousand humans left alive on the entire planet. Think of that number dissolving like mist in your mind. A few thousand souls scattered across Africa, holding within their small communities the entire future of human civilization. But here's where the story takes its first mysterious turn. These weren't the primitive, club-wielding figures we might imagine from old textbooks. Archaeological evidence now shows that these survivors possessed something remarkable. They had already learned to speak in complex languages, to plan months ahead, to create art that expressed not just what they saw, but what they dreamed. In the Blombos Cave of South Africa, researchers have uncovered ochre crayons dating back 100,000 years, decorated with intricate patterns that speak to minds capable of symbolic thought. Imagine our ancestors, even in their darkest hour, taking time to create beauty. They would sit by firelight, carefully grinding minerals into pigments, their weathered hands moving with the same creative impulse that stirs in you when you doodle mindlessly, when you arrange flowers, when you pause to watch light dance across water. The volcanic winter raged on, but these small bands of humans had already mastered something that would prove far more powerful than individual strength. They had learned to think as one. They shared knowledge like breath itself, passing survival wisdom from elder to child through stories that transformed practical information into sacred memory. A grandmother might gather the young ones close as wind howled outside their shelter, her voice soft with age and authority. Listen well, little ones. When the zebra herds move toward the evening star, the rains will follow in 7 suns. But when they turn toward the morning light, we must prepare our hearts for dry seasons ahead. This wasn't superstition. This was science poetry, ecological wisdom encoded in memorable verses that could mean the difference between feast and famine. Modern researchers studying traditional knowledge holders have discovered that these kinds of ecological calendars, passed down through oral tradition, can predict weather patterns and animal migrations with stunning accuracy, sometimes surpassing our satellite-based systems. As you sink deeper into your pillow tonight, feel the weight of this truth settling over you like a warm blanket. You carry within your DNA the legacy of humans who learned to read the Earth's moods like a beloved book, who survived impossible odds, not through conflict, but through cooperation, observation, and the patient accumulation of wisdom across generations. The Ice Age winds are calling us deeper into their story, but first, let your breathing slow to match the ancient rhythms they learned to follow. In and out, like tides that have pulsed unchanged for millions of years, carrying secrets we're only beginning to remember. In 1856, in a limestone cave nestled in Germany's Neander Valley, workers made a discovery that would shatter humanity's understanding of its own past. What they found wasn't just old bones, but the remains of beings so remarkably similar to us, yet subtly different, that science had to invent entirely new ways of thinking about human evolution. The Neanderthals, as they came to be known, lived across Europe and Western Asia for over 300,000 years. For perspective, that's roughly 6 times longer than our species, Homo sapiens, has existed. Imagine that span of time as a slow, peaceful river flowing through countless seasons, carrying with it the accumulated wisdom of thousands of generations who learned to call the ice-kissed valleys of ancient Europe home. But here's the revelation that changed everything. In 2010, scientists successfully extracted and sequenced Neanderthal DNA from fossils tens of thousands of years old. What they discovered was so profound, so intimate, that it rewrote the story of human survival entirely. If you are of European or Asian descent, approximately 2 to 4% of your genome carries Neanderthal DNA. This means that as you drift towards sleep tonight, some small part of you literally carries the memories of ancestors who weathered ice ages in caves painted with handprints still visible today, who developed the first sophisticated tools for working wood and leather, who were perhaps the first humans to deliberately bury their dead with flowers. The meeting between our species and theirs wasn't the violent conquest that early anthropologists imagined. Instead, genetic evidence points to something far more beautiful. 2 closely related human species who recognized in each other not strangers to be feared, but kindred spirits to be loved. They shared not just genetic material, but knowledge, culture, and probably languages that blended like streams flowing together into broader rivers. Recent discoveries at sites like Kafsa Cave in Israel have revealed something even more remarkable. Neanderthals and early humans may have lived side by side for thousands of years, sharing hunting grounds, trading resources, and learning from each other's unique approaches to survival. Neanderthal tools found alongside Homo sapiens artifacts suggest not competition, but collaboration on a scale that challenges everything we thought we knew about prehistoric life. Consider this gentle mystery as your consciousness begins to soften around the edges. Neanderthals had brains actually larger than ours on average. They were master toolmakers capable of creating implements that required planning 20 or 30 steps ahead. They controlled fire with such skill that they could create different types of flame for different purposes: cooking, toolmaking, protection, and ritual. At the Shanidar Cave in Iraq, archaeologists found evidence of a Neanderthal burial from 60,000 years ago, surrounded by 8 different types of wildflowers. The pollen analysis revealed not random scattering, but careful selection. Chamomile, yarrow, groundsel flowers, still used today for their healing properties. Someone who loved this person understood plants as medicine and chose to honor their dead with nature's pharmacy. This wasn't primitive behavior. This was sophisticated spiritual practice, medical knowledge, and emotional depth woven together into customs that speak to minds as complex and feeling as your own. As you settle deeper into rest, imagine the conversations that must have taken place around evening fires when these two human species shared the same valleys. Picture the patient teaching, the mutual curiosity, the slow exchange of survival wisdom that helped both groups weather the unpredictable climate of the last ice age. The genetic legacy of that cooperation flows through millions of people alive today, including perhaps you. In your immune system, scientists have identified Neanderthal genes that provide enhanced resistance to certain diseases. In the shape of your skull, the density of your bones, even in how your body processes certain types of food, you might be experiencing the biological gifts of ancestors who mastered survival through partnership rather than domination. Just when scientists thought they had mapped the basic story of human evolution, a discovery in a Siberian cave turned everything upside down once again. In 2008, researchers working in Denisova Cave found a single finger bone so small it could rest comfortably in your palm. That tiny fragment contained DNA that revealed the existence of an entirely unknown human species. The Denisovans, as they were named, lived across Asia for hundreds of thousands of years, from the Siberian highlands to the tropical islands of Southeast Asia. What makes their story so remarkable isn't just their existence, but how their genetic legacy connects us to human adaptations that seem almost magical in their precision. If you have ancestry from Tibet, Papua New Guinea, or Aboriginal Australia, you carry Denisovan DNA that gives you extraordinary abilities to thrive in environments that would challenge other humans. Tibetan people, for instance, inherited Denisovan genes that allow them to live comfortably at altitudes where the air is so thin that most visitors from lower elevations would struggle to catch their breath. Imagine the Denisovan ancestors of modern Tibetans living for millennia on the roof of the world, their bodies slowly adapting to extract oxygen from air so rarefied it's almost like breathing starlight. Their hearts beat differently, their blood carries oxygen with unusual efficiency, and their metabolisms learn to function in conditions that would be impossible for most of humanity. But the Denisovan story reaches even further into the mysterious. Recent genetic analysis has revealed that these ancient humans may have interbred with not just Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, but with another, even more archaic human species that we haven't yet identified from fossils. This means that the DNA flowing through your veins tonight carries whispers of human ancestors so ancient, so adapted to environments we can barely imagine, that they exist now only as ghost sequences in your genetic code. In the tropical islands of Southeast Asia, Denisovan DNA helped modern humans adapt to intense heat, humid climates, and unique disease pressures. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia carry genetic variations that helped their ancestors navigate and survive in one of Earth's most challenging continents for over 65,000 years. Their DNA contains biological wisdom for processing different types of plant toxins, for surviving on limited water, for reading the subtle environmental cues that mean the difference between life and death in the outback. Think of this as you allow your mind to wander towards sleep. Your body is literally a living library of survival strategies developed over hundreds of thousands of years. Every breath you take is guided by adaptations perfected by ancestors who lived through ice ages, volcanic winters, massive climate changes, and migrations across impossible distances. Recent studies of human DNA have identified over 400 genes that show signs of recent evolutionary adaptation changes that occurred within the last 40,000 years, driven by the challenges our Stone Age ancestors faced and overcame. Some of these changes affect how you digest different foods, how your immune system recognizes threats, how your brain processes information, even how your skin responds to different amounts of sunlight. But perhaps the most beautiful discovery is this. Humans living in different environments didn't just adapt differently to local conditions, they also maintained enough genetic similarity to continue recognizing each other as family. Despite tens of thousands of years of separation, despite adaptation to radically different climates and landscapes, human populations never lost the ability to interbreed and share knowledge. This suggests something profound about the nature of human survival during the Stone Age. Our ancestors were never truly isolated. Even when separated by vast distances, they maintained connections, trade routes, migration patterns, exchange of ideas that kept the human family genetically and culturally linked across continents. Archaeological evidence now shows that even 40,000 years ago, humans were trading materials across distances of hundreds of miles. Obsidian tools found in France were carved from volcanic glass that originated in Italy. Shells from the Mediterranean have been found in caves hundreds of miles inland, carefully shaped into jewelry and decorative objects. Your ancestors weren't just surviving, they were creating networks of connection that spanned landscapes as vast as entire modern countries. They were travelers, traders, and communicators whose survival depended not on isolation, but on maintaining threads of connection that kept human knowledge flowing like underground streams, surfacing wherever it was needed most. As you lie in comfort tonight, your body temperature gradually cooling towards sleep, you're experiencing an ancient rhythm that connects you directly to your Stone Age ancestors. This isn't metaphor or poetry, it's biology expressing itself through patterns that haven't changed in 200,000 years. Your circadian clock, that internal timekeeper that makes you feel alert in the morning and drowsy at night, was calibrated by ancestors who lived without artificial light for millions of years. They rose with the sun and settled into rest as stars emerged, their daily cycles so perfectly synchronized with natural rhythms that their bodies became living instruments for reading time itself. Recent studies of traditional societies that still live without electric lighting have revealed something remarkable. Their sleep patterns change with the seasons in ways that urban humans have almost forgotten. In winter, they naturally sleep longer, their bodies conserving energy during the months when food was traditionally scarce. In summer, they rise earlier and stay active later, matching the increased daylight hours that signaled abundance and opportunity. Your brain still carries this seasonal wisdom. Even surrounded by artificial lights and climate control, if you pay attention, you might notice subtle shifts in your energy levels, your appetite, your desire for different types of foods as seasons change. These are echoes of survival strategies that kept your ancestors healthy through countless cycles of feast and famine. But the connection goes deeper than sleep and seasons. Recent advances in epigenetics, the study of how genes can be turned on or off by environmental factors, have revealed that traumatic experiences can actually alter gene expression in ways that get passed down to children and grandchildren. This means that the survival challenges your ancestors faced during the Stone Age may have left molecular traces in your DNA that influence how you respond to stress, how you form social bonds, even how you perceive and react to danger. Some researchers call this genetic memory, the idea that significant experiences can create biological changes that echo across generations. If your ancestors survived periods of severe famine, you might carry gene variants that make your metabolism more efficient at storing energy. If they lived through periods of intense social cooperation, you might have inherited tendencies toward empathy and group loyalty that helped their communities survive. Consider this mystery as your consciousness begins to drift. Post-traumatic stress disorder, that condition we associate with modern warfare and catastrophic events, may actually be an ancient survival mechanism. The hypervigilance, the heightened startle response, the difficulty sleeping, these aren't necessarily signs of damage, but remnants of survival systems that helped our ancestors stay alive in genuinely dangerous environments. Your Stone Age ancestors lived with predators that hunted humans, cave lions with fangs as long as your fingers, short-faced bears that stood 12 feet tall on their hind legs, saber-toothed cats that could bring down prey twice their size. The part of your brain that scans for threats, that makes you jump at unexpected sounds, that keeps you alert in unfamiliar places, this neural circuitry was shaped by millions of years of evolution in a world where vigilance meant survival. But your ancestors didn't survive through fear alone. They developed something more sophisticated, the ability to distinguish between real threats and false alarms, to read environmental cues that indicated safety versus danger, to maintain calm alertness without chronic anxiety. Hunter-gatherer societies studied by anthropologists show remarkably low levels of chronic stress-related diseases, despite living in environments that would challenge most modern humans. They developed what we might call relaxed awareness, the ability to be fully present and responsive to their environment, while maintaining inner calm and social connection. This state of relaxed awareness is exactly what you're cultivating as you settle into sleep tonight. Your nervous system is gradually shifting from the active alertness of daily life into the restorative relaxation that allows your body and mind to repair, integrate, and prepare for tomorrow. Your ancestors perfected this transition over hundreds of thousands of years. They learned to read the approach of evening not as a time of vulnerability, but as a daily opportunity for restoration, storytelling, and deepening social bonds. They gathered around fires that provided warmth, light, and protection, while fostering the conversations that passed wisdom from elder to young. Recent research suggests that the human capacity for complex language may have evolved specifically to support these evening gatherings. The ability to share detailed stories, to plan future activities, to process the emotional experiences of the day, these linguistic skills developed alongside the social customs that transform the vulnerable hours of darkness into times of safety and connection. As your breathing deepens and your muscles relax, you're participating in a ritual as old as humanity itself, the daily transition from active engagement with the world to peaceful surrender, to rest and dreams. Your ancestors perfected this ritual just as individuals but as communities that protected each other through the vulnerable hours of sleep. Remember the volcanic winter that nearly ended humanity 70,000 years ago? The ash-darkened skies and dropping temperatures that reduced our species to perhaps only a few thousand survivors scattered across Africa. Now that you've journeyed deeper into the story of human resilience, we can return to that moment with fresh understanding of just how remarkable that survival truly was. When Mount Toba erupted in what is now Indonesia, it released energy equivalent to millions of nuclear weapons, ejecting so much ash and sulfur into the atmosphere that global temperatures dropped by an estimated 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. For comparison, the Little Ice Age that gripped Europe from 1300 to 1850 involved temperature drops of only 1 to 2 degrees. The Toba winter was climate catastrophe on a scale that modern humans have never experienced. Imagine your ancestors during those dark years, the sun dimmed to a pale ghost of itself, filtering weakly through ash-laden skies. Plants withered in the unnatural twilight. Animal populations crashed as food webs collapsed. Rivers and lakes froze in regions that had never seen ice. Yet somehow, through this planetary-scale disaster, small bands of humans not only survived, but maintained the knowledge and social structures that would eventually repopulate the world. How did they do it? The answer lies in a form of intelligence that we're only now beginning to appreciate: collective wisdom. Your Stone Age ancestors had developed something more powerful than individual genius. They had created learning communities where knowledge flowed freely between generations, where survival strategies were tested, refined, and passed along through stories, songs, and hands-on teaching. When the volcanic winter struck, they didn't face it as isolated individuals scrambling for resources. They faced it as interconnected groups whose survival depended on sharing everything they knew about reading environmental changes, finding food in harsh conditions, and maintaining social cooperation under extreme stress. Recent studies of how traditional societies respond to natural disasters reveal patterns that echo back to this ancient resilience. When faced with environmental challenges, hunter-gatherer groups increase their social cooperation rather than competing for scarce resources. They share knowledge more freely, extend their caring networks to include more distant relatives, and develop collective strategies that ensure the survival of the community as a whole. This response pattern appears to be deeply embedded in human psychology. Even today, when faced with natural disasters, most people's first instinct isn't to hoard resources or compete with their neighbors. Instead, they reach out to help, share what they have, and work together to rebuild their communities. Your ancestors who survived the Toba volcanic winter were the ones whose communities had perfected this cooperative response. They were the groups that had learned to see individual survival as inseparable from collective well-being, who understood that in times of crisis, the wisdom of the group was far more powerful than the intelligence of any single person. But their survival strategy went deeper than just social cooperation. Archaeological evidence from sites that date to this period shows something remarkable. Even during the worst of the volcanic winter, humans continued to innovate, to experiment with new technologies, and to maintain cultural practices that had no immediate survival value. At Pinnacle Point in South Africa, researchers have found evidence that humans living through the post-Toba period were harvesting shellfish from tidal pools, using heat-treated stone tools, and creating symbolic art. These weren't desperate survivors clinging to bare existence. These were communities that had learned to find beauty and meaning even in the midst of catastrophe. They developed new hunting techniques adapted to the changed animal populations. They learned to identify and process plant foods that could survive in the altered climate. They created new forms of shelter and clothing adapted to the cooler temperatures. But most importantly, they maintained the cultural practices, storytelling, art making, ritual that kept their communities psychologically resilient through years of hardship. Modern research on disaster resilience has identified what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where individuals and communities become stronger, more creative, and more connected as a result of facing significant challenges. Your ancestors who survived the Toba winter may have experienced something similar on a species-wide scale. The genetic bottleneck that reduced humanity to a few thousand individuals may have inadvertently selected for traits that made us remarkably adaptable: enhanced cooperation, rapid learning ability, creative problem-solving, and the capacity to maintain hope and social connection even under extreme stress. As you feel your body relaxing deeper into sleep tonight, consider this profound truth. Every breath you take, every heartbeat, every thought that flows through your consciousness is a direct result of ancestors who faced impossible odds and chose not just to survive, but to thrive together. The same neural pathways that allowed them to remain calm and creative under extreme pressure are still functioning in your brain as you drift peacefully toward rest. Perhaps the most mysterious aspect of Stone Age survival wasn't what humans did, but what they somehow knew without anyone teaching them. Across continents, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, human communities independently discovered the same survival strategies, developed similar tools, and even created remarkably similar artistic expressions. This phenomenon puzzles archaeologists and anthropologists because it suggests a form of knowledge transmission that operates beyond normal learning. How did humans in Africa, Asia, Europe, and eventually Australia, and the Americas all discover that certain cave paintings, when created with specific mineral pigments and particular geometric patterns, could serve as memory aids for complex ecological knowledge? Recent analysis of Paleolithic cave art has revealed that what early researchers dismissed as random decoration may actually represent sophisticated information storage systems. The geometric patterns found in caves from Spain to Indonesia follow mathematical principles that help the human brain organize and remember complex information about seasonal changes, animal behavior, and resource locations. Consider the mystery of the Venus figurines, small carved sculptures of women found at archaeological sites across Europe dating from 28,000 to 25,000 years ago. These figurines, created by artists separated by thousands of miles and hundreds of generations, show such remarkable similarities in style and proportion that they seem to represent shared knowledge about something important to human survival. Some researchers now believe these figurines may have served as teaching tools, helping communities pass down knowledge about nutrition during pregnancy, the timing of seasonal fertility cycles, or even medical information about childbirth and early infant care. The exaggerated proportions that once puzzled researchers may actually represent practical information encoded in artistic form, a way of preserving and transmitting crucial survival knowledge across generations. But the phenomenon goes beyond art into the realm of practical innovation. Humans independently invented the bow and arrow multiple times in different continents using remarkably similar engineering principles. They discovered fire-hardening techniques for wooden tools, developed comparable strategies for preserving food, and created musical instruments based on the same acoustic principles regardless of available materials. This suggests something remarkable about human intelligence during the Stone Age. Our ancestors weren't just learning from direct experience or explicit teaching. They were somehow tapping into what we might call species-level wisdom, patterns of knowledge that emerge naturally when human minds engage deeply with environmental challenges. Modern cognitive science has begun to identify the mechanisms behind this phenomenon. When humans spend extended time observing natural systems, their brains begin to recognize patterns that aren't immediately obvious. This ecological intelligence allows people to predict animal behavior, weather changes, and resource availability with accuracy that often surpasses scientific instruments. Your Stone Age ancestors spent their entire lives embedded in natural environments, their survival dependent on reading subtle cues that most modern humans never notice. The angle of morning light that indicates seasonal change, the particular call of birds that signals approaching weather, the almost imperceptible shift in plant growth that indicates underground water sources. Over thousands of years of this deep observation, human communities developed what researchers now call traditional ecological knowledge, an understanding of natural systems so sophisticated that modern scientists regularly discover new principles by studying the practices of indigenous peoples who maintain this ancient wisdom. But perhaps the most impossible phenomenon of all is what happened when Stone Age humans began to dream together. Recent studies of hunter-gatherer societies that maintain traditional practices have revealed that communities often share remarkably similar dreams, particularly during times of environmental stress or important seasonal transitions. These shared dreams aren't random coincidences. They appear to serve as a form of collective problem-solving, where the unconscious minds of community members work together to process challenges and generate innovative solutions. Anthropologists have documented cases where traditional societies have discovered new hunting grounds, identified previously unknown plant medicines, or developed novel survival strategies that first appeared in the dreams of multiple community members. Your ancestors may have used dreaming as a form of collective intelligence, where the accumulated wisdom of the community could be accessed and processed during sleep. The same neural networks that process your dreams tonight may be descended from brain systems that once allowed humans to share survival knowledge across the boundaries of individual consciousness. This isn't mysticism, it's neuroscience we're only beginning to understand. Recent research on collective intelligence has shown that groups of people, when properly connected, can solve problems and process information in ways that surpass individual human capability. Your Stone Age ancestors, living in small, tightly knit communities with survival depending on perfect coordination, may have developed forms of group intelligence that we've only recently begun to rediscover. As your own consciousness begins to merge with the dreaming state tonight, you're participating in a process that may connect you not just to your own unconscious wisdom, but to patterns of knowledge that flow through human communities like underground rivers, surfacing wherever they're needed most. The impossible phenomenon of Stone Age survival may ultimately be this: humans learned to think not just as individuals, but as communities, as species, as conscious participants in the larger intelligence of life itself. The same capacity that allowed your ancestors to survive ice ages and volcanic winters is still available to you, flowing quietly beneath the surface of your everyday awareness, ready to emerge whenever you need wisdom that transcends what any single mind could discover alone. There comes a moment in every deep exploration of human origins when the scientific facts begin to transform into something larger, a recognition that the story of Stone Age survival is ultimately a love story. Not romantic love, but the deeper love that binds generations together, the love that makes people willing to sacrifice their own comfort to ensure that wisdom survives, that children thrive, that communities endure. Imagine, if you can, the moment when the last ice age began to end approximately 11,700 years ago. Your ancestors had lived through tens of thousands of years of glacial conditions, their entire cultures adapted to a world of ice and tundra. They had mastered survival in landscapes that would challenge the most experienced modern adventurers. Their stories, their technologies, their understanding of seasonal cycles, everything was calibrated to an Earth locked in eternal winter. Then, gradually, the world began to change. The massive ice sheets that had covered northern continents for millennia started to retreat. New landscapes emerged, vast grasslands where glaciers had once stood, forests beginning to creep northward, rivers carving new paths through terrain that had been frozen for thousands of generations. For many species, rapid climate change spells extinction. Populations that have adapted to specific conditions over thousands of years usually cannot adjust quickly enough when those conditions change dramatically. But humans not only survived the transition from Ice Age to interglacial period, they thrived in ways that transformed the entire planet. The secret wasn't biological adaptation, it was emotional and cultural flexibility. Your ancestors had developed something unprecedented in natural history: the ability to love change itself, to find excitement and opportunity in uncertainty rather than just threat and loss. Archaeological evidence from this transition period reveals communities that were actively experimenting with new ways of life. They were domesticating plants and animals, not just to secure food supplies, but apparently for the joy of nurturing other species and watching them flourish under human care. The first farmers weren't desperate survivors clinging to subsistence. They were innovators exploring new relationships with the living world. At sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dating to over 11,000 years ago, archaeologists have found massive stone temples built by communities that were still primarily hunter-gatherers. These monuments required thousands of people working together over many years, carving and moving stones that weigh up to 20 tons each, creating artistic masterpieces that served no obvious survival purpose. This suggests something profound about the emotional and spiritual life of your ancestors during this period. Even as they were developing agriculture, building the first permanent settlements, and creating the foundations of what would eventually become civilization, they were investing enormous energy in projects that existed purely to express wonder, to create beauty, to connect with something sacred in their relationship with the natural world. The emotional peak of Stone Age survival may have been this recognition. Humans had not just learned to survive in nature, they had learned to fall in love with the process of survival itself. They found joy in observation, pleasure in problem solving, deep satisfaction in the daily work of caring for their communities and their environment. Recent studies of contemporary hunter-gatherer societies reveal patterns of emotional well-being that challenge many assumptions about prehistoric life. Rather than living in constant anxiety about survival, traditional societies often report higher levels of life satisfaction, stronger social connections, and lower rates of depression and anxiety than many modern populations. This isn't because their lives are easier, but because their survival strategies are inherently meaningful. When your daily work consists of activities that directly support the health and happiness of people you love, when your knowledge and skills are valued by your community, when your connection to the natural world provides constant learning and discovery, survival itself becomes a form of creative expression. Your Stone Age ancestors discovered something that modern psychology is only now rediscovering. Meaning and purpose are not luxuries that become available after basic needs are met. They are fundamental human needs, as essential to survival as food and shelter. Communities that found ways to embed purpose and beauty into their daily survival practices were not just more likely to survive, they were more likely to thrive, to innovate, and to create cultures that could adapt to change. The universe, as your ancestors experienced it, was not a hostile place where humans struggled against natural forces. It was a vast, living system where human intelligence and creativity could participate in ongoing creation. Every tool they shaped, every shelter they built, every child they raised was both a practical necessity and an act of love, a contribution to the unfolding story of consciousness, learning to understand itself through relationship with the natural world. As you drift deeper into the relaxed awareness that precedes sleep, you can feel this ancient pattern still flowing through your own life. The same impulse that drove your ancestors to create beauty, even under harsh conditions, to find meaning in daily work, to maintain hope and curiosity, even facing uncertainty. This impulse lives on in your desire to create, to connect, to contribute something valuable to the communities and environments you inhabit. The emotional peak of human evolution may not lie in the future, but in a deep recognition of patterns that your ancestors perfected long ago. The understanding that survival and creativity are not separate activities, that individual well-being and collective flourishing are inseparable, that human consciousness is not separate from the natural world, but is the natural world becoming aware of itself through our eyes, our thoughts, our capacity for love. As we move deeper into this journey through time, let your breathing naturally slow and deepen, matching the ancient rhythms that guided your ancestors through countless seasons of change. We're transitioning now from the dramatic peaks of discovery into the gentler valleys of reflection, where wisdom settles like morning mist on still water. The story of Stone Age survival begins to reveal its most subtle teachings when we step back from individual moments of drama and observe the larger patterns that unfolded across millennia. Your ancestors didn't just survive crisis after crisis, they learned to dance with change itself, developing a form of cultural flexibility that allowed human communities to thrive in virtually every environment on Earth. Consider the gentle patience this required. When climate patterns shifted, it might take several generations for communities to fully adapt their practices. Knowledge had to be carefully preserved during transition periods, held in trust by elders who remembered the old ways while younger people experimented with new approaches. This required a form of collective wisdom that balanced respect for tradition with openness to innovation. Recent studies of how traditional societies manage environmental change reveal sophisticated decision-making processes that modern organizations are only beginning to understand. Rather than making rapid changes in response to short-term pressures, traditional communities often maintain multiple strategies simultaneously, gradually shifting emphasis toward approaches that prove most effective over time. Your ancestors developed what we might call adaptive patience, the ability to respond thoughtfully to change without panic, to maintain stability while exploring new possibilities, to trust in collective wisdom while remaining open to unexpected insights. This is the same quality you can cultivate in your own life, allowing challenges to unfold at their natural pace while maintaining confidence in your capacity to adapt and grow. The gentle slowdown that we're experiencing now in this story mirrors a pattern that your ancestors would have recognized. After periods of intense activity and discovery, natural systems require time for integration, for allowing new knowledge to settle into established patterns, for finding the sustainable rhythms that can be maintained over the long term. When Stone Age communities discovered new territories or developed new technologies, they didn't immediately abandon their previous practices. Instead, they entered periods of careful experimentation, testing new approaches while maintaining proven survival strategies as backup plans. This cautious wisdom allowed them to benefit from innovation without risking community survival on untested ideas. Archaeological evidence reveals that major technological transitions often took thousands of years to fully unfold. The shift from purely hunting and gathering societies to agricultural communities wasn't a sudden revolution, but a gradual process where communities slowly learned to cultivate certain plants while continuing to rely primarily on wild resources. They developed pottery for storing food while still using traditional methods for food preservation. They began domesticating animals while maintaining extensive knowledge of hunting wild species. This pattern of gradual integration suggests something important about how your ancestors processed change. They understood that survival wisdom isn't just about adopting new strategies, it's about maintaining the flexibility to draw from multiple approaches as circumstances require. They were building resilience through diversity rather than efficiency through specialization. Modern research on complex systems has identified this same principle. The most resilient communities and ecosystems are those that maintain diversity in their approaches to challenges. Monocultures, whether biological or cultural, may be highly efficient under stable conditions, but they're vulnerable to collapse when conditions change unexpectedly. Your Stone Age ancestors were unconsciously applying systems, thinking thousands of years before we had language to describe these concepts. They intuitively understood that community survival required maintaining multiple forms of knowledge, multiple social structures, multiple relationships with the environment, so that when change occurred, they would have alternatives already in place. As your mind begins to settle into the quieter rhythms of approaching sleep, you can sense this ancient wisdom still operating in your own life. The same patient flexibility that allowed your ancestors to navigate major environmental changes is available to you when facing transitions in your career, relationships, or understanding of yourself. The gentle slowdown that characterizes this phase of our journey reflects a profound truth about how sustainable change occurs. Just as your ancestors learned to integrate new survival strategies gradually, allowing time for community consensus and careful testing, your own personal growth follows similar patterns of careful integration, punctuated by moments of breakthrough insight. Recent neuroscience research has revealed that the brain processes and consolidates new information most effectively during periods of relaxed attention, like the state you're entering now. When you're not actively focused on problem solving, your mind enters what researchers call the default mode network, a state of neural activity that allows different brain regions to communicate more freely, creating connections that might not emerge during focused concentration. Your Stone Age ancestors, living without artificial stimulation, would have spent hours each day in states similar to what you're experiencing now. Relaxed awareness that allows the mind to process experiences, integrate learning, and access insights that emerge from the intersection of conscious knowledge and unconscious wisdom. They understood something that modern life often obscures. Periods of gentle slowdown aren't wasted time, but essential phases in the learning process. After intense periods of activity, hunting, traveling, problem-solving, communities would naturally settle into quieter rhythms where stories could be shared, experiences could be processed, and wisdom could be passed between generations. The evening gatherings around fires served this same function, creating space for the transition from active engagement with daily challenges to the restorative states that allow deeper integration and renewal. As you continue settling into your own evening rhythm, you're participating in a pattern as old as human consciousness itself. the daily cycle of engagement and restoration that allows both individual minds and community wisdom to flourish. In the soft transition toward deeper rest, we encounter one of the most beautiful secrets your Stone Age ancestors discovered: the recognition that nature operates through hidden forces more powerful and elegant than anything visible on the surface. Your ancestors learned to navigate by reading patterns that most modern humans never notice. They could predict weather changes days in advance by observing the behavior of insects, the angle of bird flight, the subtle shifts in how plants held their leaves. They understood that everything in nature is connected through invisible networks of communication and influence. Recent scientific research has begun to validate what traditional peoples have always known. Forests communicate through underground fungal networks that share nutrients and information between trees separated by great distances. Plants release chemical signals that warn neighboring plants about insect attacks. Even the soil beneath your feet is alive with microbial communities that process information and respond to environmental changes with sophisticated coordination. Your ancestors lived embedded within these natural communication networks. They learned to read the subtle signals that flow constantly through living systems, the almost imperceptible changes in air pressure that precede weather shifts, the quiet chemical messages that plants release when seasons change, the underground vibrations that travel through earth and rock to announce distant events. This wasn't mystical knowledge, it was practical science developed through generations of careful observation. When your survival depends on accurately predicting natural phenomena, you develop sensitivities that go far beyond ordinary conscious awareness. You learn to trust intuitions that emerge from processing thousands of subtle environmental cues below the threshold of conscious thought. Modern research on non-local awareness has documented cases where people living close to nature can sense events happening at distances that shouldn't be detectable through normal sensory channels. Indigenous trackers can locate animals they haven't seen by reading signs so subtle that scientists with instruments have difficulty detecting them. Traditional weather predictors can forecast storms with accuracy that rivals satellite-based systems by observing patterns in cloud formation, air movement, and animal behavior. Your Stone Age ancestors developed these capacities not as special gifts, but as ordinary survival skills. When you live for thousands of generations in intimate relationship with natural systems, your nervous system naturally attunes to the subtle rhythms and patterns that govern ecological health. As you drift deeper into relaxation tonight, you can sense echoes of this ancient attunement in your own awareness. The part of you that notices when someone is watching you from across a room, that feels uneasy in certain places for no obvious reason, that somehow knows when weather is about to change. These are remnants of sensory capacities that your ancestors relied upon daily for survival. The hidden forces they learned to read weren't supernatural. They were the natural intelligence that flows through all living systems. Every ecosystem operates as a kind of collective mind, processing information and responding to challenges through the coordinated activity of thousands of species. Your ancestors learned to participate in this collective intelligence, contributing their own observations and insights while benefiting from the accumulated wisdom of the entire natural community. Recent studies of how traditional societies make decisions about resource management reveal patterns that mirror the self-organizing intelligence observed in natural systems. Rather than relying on centralized authority, these communities often make collective decisions through processes that allow the wisdom of the group to emerge naturally, much like flocks of birds coordinate their movement without any individual bird directing the flock. Your ancestors developed social structures that functioned as extensions of natural intelligence. Their communities could respond to challenges with flexibility and creativity that emerged from the collective wisdom of all members, including insights contributed by children, elders, and individuals who might have been overlooked in more hierarchical societies. This form of collective intelligence required something that modern life often discourages: the ability to listen deeply not just to other people, but to the subtle patterns of information that flow through natural and social environments. Your ancestors learned to quiet their internal mental chatter enough to perceive the quiet signals that indicate when systems are healthy, when changes are approaching, and when intervention might be helpful or harmful. The same capacity for deep listening that allowed your ancestors to navigate by reading natural patterns is available to you right now. As your consciousness settles into the gentle rhythms of approaching sleep, you're naturally entering a state where these subtle, perceptual abilities become more accessible. In traditional societies, the transition into sleep was often understood as a time when individuals could access information that wasn't available during ordinary waking consciousness. Dreams were treated not as random mental activity, but as a form of intelligence that could provide guidance, solve problems, and reveal connections that weren't obvious during daylight thinking. Your Stone Age ancestors may have used dreaming as a form of research, allowing their unconscious minds to process the complex environmental data they gathered during waking hours and generate insights about where to find food, how to respond to weather changes, and when to move to different territories. As you continue settling into your own natural sleep rhythms, you're participating in this ancient form of intelligence gathering, allowing your mind to process the experiences of your day while remaining open to insights that might emerge from the intersection of conscious knowledge and unconscious wisdom. Let your awareness now settle into the contemplative rhythm of deep observation, matching the patient attention that allowed your ancestors to discover the great cycles that govern all life on Earth. In the gentle space between waking and sleeping, we can sense the vast, slow pulses that have shaped human experience for hundreds of thousands of years. Your Stone Age ancestors were the first scientists in the truest sense, careful observers who spent lifetimes watching patterns unfold across seasons, years, and generations. They discovered that nature operates through nested cycles within cycles, each rhythm interconnected with others in ways that create the complex symphony of environmental change. They learned to read the daily cycle of temperature and light, understanding how the angle of morning shadows could predict the weather patterns of the afternoon. They mastered the monthly rhythms of moon phases, recognizing how lunar cycles influence tides, animal behavior, and even human fertility. They tracked annual patterns of plant growth and animal migration, building calendars in their minds that could predict resource availability many months in advance. But perhaps most remarkably, they began to perceive cycles that operated across multiple generations, long-term climate patterns, the gradual evolution of landscapes, the slow changes in plant and animal populations that unfolded over decades or centuries. This required a form of collective memory that transcended individual lifespans, where knowledge accumulated across generations like sediments, forming layers of wisdom in the collective mind of the community. Archaeological evidence suggests that some Stone Age communities maintained oral traditions that preserved environmental knowledge for thousands of years. Aboriginal Australian cultures, for instance, have maintained dreamtime stories that accurately describe geographical features and climate patterns from over 10,000 years ago, when sea levels were much lower and the landscape was dramatically different from today. This long-term thinking allowed your ancestors to develop what we might call generational wisdom, the ability to make decisions not just based on immediate needs, but in consideration of how current actions would affect the well-being of children, grandchildren, and descendants they would never meet. They understood that human survival required thinking in cycles that extended far beyond individual lifetimes. Recent research on complex systems has revealed that the most stable and resilient ecosystems are those that maintain balance across multiple timescales. Natural systems that can adapt to daily variations, seasonal changes, and long-term environmental shifts are the ones that persist through centuries and millennia of change. Your ancestors intuitively understood this principle and applied it to their own survival strategies. They developed technologies and social practices that worked not just for immediate survival, but for long-term sustainability. Their tools were designed to be repaired and maintained across generations. Their hunting and gathering practices were carefully calibrated to harvest resources without depleting them. Their social structures were built to maintain knowledge and cooperation across decades of changing membership and leadership. This cyclical thinking created a form of temporal intelligence that allowed human communities to navigate change with remarkable stability. Rather than responding to each challenge as an isolated crisis, they understood current events as part of larger patterns that could be anticipated and prepared for through accumulated wisdom. As your breathing naturally synchronizes with these deeper rhythms, you can sense how this ancient temporal intelligence still operates in your own life. Your circadian rhythms connect you to daily cycles that have remained constant for millions of years. Your seasonal responses to changing light and temperature reflect adaptations developed over hundreds of thousands of years. Even your social and emotional patterns often follow cycles that echo the rhythms your ancestors learned to navigate. The meditative quality of this cyclical awareness allowed your ancestors to remain calm and centered even during periods of dramatic change. When they understood current challenges as part of larger patterns, they could respond with patience and wisdom rather than panic and reactivity. They learned to trust that difficult periods would pass, that favorable conditions would return, and that communities with sufficient knowledge and cooperation could navigate successfully through almost any environmental challenge. Modern meditation practices often aim to cultivate this same quality of cyclical awareness, the ability to observe experiences arising and passing away without becoming overly attached to either pleasure or distress, recognizing that all phenomena occur within larger cycles of change that can be trusted and navigated with skill. Your Stone Age ancestors were naturally practicing this form of meditative awareness as they learned to read environmental patterns. They developed what Buddhist traditions call equanimity, the ability to remain balanced and responsive without being overwhelmed by the constant changes occurring in both internal experience and external circumstances. This meditative quality allowed them to access forms of intelligence that operate best in states of relaxed attention. When you're not struggling against current conditions or anxious about future changes, your mind naturally aligns with the deeper intelligence that flows through natural systems. You can perceive connections and patterns that aren't visible when consciousness is contracted around immediate concerns. As you continue settling into the natural rhythms that govern rest and restoration, you're accessing the same state of meditative awareness that allowed your ancestors to discover the great cycles that shape reality. In this relaxed attention, insights can emerge that connect you not just to your own life patterns, but to the larger rhythms that guide the evolution of consciousness itself. The cycles that shaped your ancestors' survival strategies continue to operate today, though often hidden beneath the complexity of modern life. Learning to recognize and align with these deeper patterns may be one of the most important skills for navigating the challenges and opportunities of contemporary existence, just as it was for your Stone Age ancestors who learned to thrive within the great cycles of natural change. As consciousness gently expands beyond the boundaries of individual awareness, we begin to sense the vast scales of space and time within which your Stone Age ancestors lived and thrived. Allow your perspective to drift outward, like awareness itself expanding, to embrace the cosmic context that shaped human survival across hundreds of thousands of years. Your ancestors lived beneath the same stars that shine above you tonight. The constellations that guided their migrations across continents are the same patterns of light that have watched over humanity since before our species learned to speak. When they looked up at the night sky, they were seeing light that had traveled for thousands of years from distant suns, connecting them directly to cosmic events that occurred before their great-grandparents were born. But they understood something about cosmic scale that modern life often obscures. Vast space and time don't diminish human significance, they reveal it. Your ancestors recognized that consciousness capable of contemplating infinity is itself one of the most remarkable phenomena in the known universe. The same awareness that allows you to imagine the distances between stars, to contemplate the age of galaxies, to wonder about the nature of existence itself, this awareness emerged through millions of years of evolution right here on Earth. Recent discoveries in astronomy have revealed that the elements in your body, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen you breathe, were forged in the nuclear fires of ancient stars that lived and died billions of years before Earth formed. Your ancestors were literally made of stardust, carrying within their bodies the condensed light of cosmic processes that operated on scales almost too vast to comprehend. Yet they lived their daily lives with full attention to immediate details, the texture of soil that indicated water below the surface, the particular call of birds that announced changing weather, the subtle expressions on a child's face that revealed health or illness. This ability to hold both cosmic perspective and intimate attention simultaneously may have been one of their greatest survival skills. When you understand yourself as part of processes that operate across billions of years, temporary challenges become more manageable. Your ancestors faced ice ages, volcanic winters, climate changes, and migrations across impossible distances, but they maintained hope and determination because they intuitively understood their place within larger patterns of cosmic evolution. They were living embodiments of the universe, becoming conscious of itself. Through their eyes, the cosmos could observe its own beauty. Through their minds, the natural world could contemplate its own patterns and processes. Through their capacity for love and cooperation, the fundamental forces that built galaxies and stars could express themselves as care for future generations. This cosmic perspective didn't make your ancestors feel insignificant. It revealed their true significance as conscious participants in ongoing creation. Every tool they shaped, every shelter they built, every child they raised was a continuation of cosmic processes that had been unfolding for billions of years. Simple elements organizing themselves into increasingly complex and beautiful forms. Modern cosmology has confirmed what your ancestors intuited. The universe appears to be evolving toward greater complexity, consciousness, and connection. From the first simple elements formed after the Big Bang, to the complex chemistry that made life possible, to the emergence of nervous systems capable of contemplating their own existence, the cosmic story is one of increasing awareness and creative potential. Your ancestors were active participants in this cosmic evolution. They weren't just products of natural processes, they were nature becoming aware of itself, developing tools and technologies, creating art and music, forming communities based on love and mutual care. Through human consciousness, the universe was learning to see itself, to understand itself, and to consciously guide its own continued evolution. As your awareness naturally expands to encompass these vast scales, you can feel the same cosmic perspective that sustained your ancestors through countless challenges. You are not a separate being struggling against an indifferent universe. You are the universe expressing itself through human form, consciousness exploring its own infinite possibilities through your unique perspective and experience. The peaceful scale of the cosmos reveals itself not as empty space dotted with distant objects, but as a living system where every part influences every other part through gravitational fields, electromagnetic radiation, and quantum processes that connect all matter and energy across any distance. Your ancestors lived within this cosmic web of connection, drawing strength from their participation in processes larger than any individual life or even any single species. Recent discoveries in quantum physics have revealed that particles can remain connected across vast distances, influencing each other instantaneously through what Einstein called spooky action at a distance. The entire universe may be a single, interconnected system where consciousness itself plays a fundamental role in shaping physical reality through observation and intention. Your Stone Age ancestors may have intuited these cosmic connections through their direct experience of living in harmony with natural systems. When you're deeply embedded in the patterns and rhythms of the natural world, you naturally begin to sense the underlying unity that connects all phenomena across every scale, from the microscopic to the cosmic. As you drift deeper into the expanded awareness that characterizes the approach to sleep, you're accessing the same cosmic consciousness that allowed your ancestors to navigate by stars, to find their place within the vast landscapes they inhabited, and to maintain hope and purpose even when facing challenges that seem to dwarf human capability. The peaceful scale of the cosmos is not separate from your immediate experience. It's the context within which every breath, every heartbeat, every gentle thought arises and dissolves like waves on an infinite ocean of awareness itself. In the quiet depths of our journey, where consciousness flows like a gentle river carrying fragments of ancient wisdom, we discover connections so subtle that science almost overlooked them entirely. Recent breakthroughs have revealed hidden threads that weave your Stone Age ancestors into the fabric of your contemporary life in ways that seem almost magical in their precision. One of the most remarkable discoveries emerged from studying the human microbiome, the trillions of bacteria, viruses, and other microorganisms that live within your body. Scientists initially assumed these were mostly random collections of microbes picked up from the environment. But detailed genetic analysis has revealed something extraordinary. Many of the bacterial strains in your digestive system are direct descendants of microorganisms that lived symbiotically with your Stone Age ancestors. These ancient microbial partners helped your ancestors digest wild plants, synthesize essential vitamins, and maintain immune function in environments filled with natural pathogens. They've been passed down through hundreds of thousands of years, from mother to child, maintaining an unbroken chain of biological wisdom that connects you directly to the survival strategies that sustained human life through ice ages and climate changes. Your gut bacteria carry within their DNA the memory of every plant your ancestors learned to eat, every geographical region they adapted to, every challenge their immune systems successfully overcame. This means that your digestion, your mood, even your decision-making processes are influenced by biological partners whose ancestors helped your Stone Age relatives thrive in environments that would challenge most modern humans. Recent research has shown that these ancestral microbes produce neurochemicals that directly influence brain function. The same bacterial strains that helped your ancestors remain calm during hunts, maintain focus during long migrations, and sleep peacefully despite environmental dangers are still operating in your digestive system, producing compounds that affect your anxiety levels, your sleep patterns, and your ability to respond to stress. But the hidden connections go even deeper. Advanced genetic analysis has revealed that your DNA contains what researchers call genomic fossils, fragments of genetic material from ancient viral infections that became permanently incorporated into the human genome. Rather than being harmful remnants, many of these viral sequences now perform essential functions in human development and immune response. Some of these genomic fossils date back millions of years, suggesting that your ancestors survived and benefited from viral encounters that helped shape human evolution. The same mechanisms that allowed Stone Age humans to survive and adapt to new pathogens are still operating in your immune system, helping you respond to contemporary health challenges using strategies developed over geological time scales. Perhaps most remarkably, recent studies have identified connections between human consciousness and quantum processes that operate at the most fundamental levels of reality. Some researchers now believe that the neural microtubules in your brain may function as quantum processors, capable of accessing information through non-local quantum entanglement effects that could theoretically connect your consciousness to quantum fields that extend throughout the universe. This might explain the seemingly impossible intuitive abilities that your Stone Age ancestors developed. Their capacity to sense weather changes before any obvious signs appeared, to locate water sources in drought conditions, to predict animal behavior with uncanny accuracy. If consciousness can access information through quantum processes that operate beyond the constraints of space and time, then the remarkable environmental sensitivity of traditional peoples becomes not mysterious, but a natural expression of quantum capabilities that modern humans have largely forgotten how to access. The hidden connections extend into the realm of genetic memory as well. Researchers studying epigenetic inheritance have discovered that environmental experiences can create genetic changes that persist for multiple generations. Traumatic events, periods of abundance, exposure to specific foods or toxins, even learning certain skills can create molecular tags on DNA that influence how genes are expressed in children and grandchildren. This means that your cellular functioning may still be influenced by environmental adaptations your ancestors made thousands of years ago. The survival strategies they developed during ice ages, the dietary adaptations they made when migrating to new territories, the stress responses they perfected for surviving in dangerous environments, all of these may have left epigenetic signatures that continue to influence your biology today. But perhaps the most beautiful hidden connection is one that researchers are just beginning to understand: the possibility that human consciousness itself serves as a bridge between individual awareness and collective intelligence fields that operate across generations. Some cutting-edge theories in consciousness research suggest that individual minds may be like nodes in a vast network of awareness that includes not only other living humans, but potentially the collective wisdom accumulated by all previous generations. Your Stone Age ancestors may have been naturally connected to this field of collective intelligence. Their survival decisions often seem to emerge not just from individual knowledge, but from access to wisdom that transcended what any single person could have learned through direct experience. They made choices that benefited not just their immediate survival, but the long-term well-being of descendants they would never meet, as if they could somehow sense the needs of future generations. As you drift deeper into the liminal state between waking and sleeping, you may be accessing similar connections to collective wisdom fields that operate beyond the boundaries of individual consciousness. The insights and inspirations that emerge during this transitional state might not be generated solely by your individual brain, but could represent access to patterns of knowledge that flow through the collective intelligence of human consciousness across time. The hidden connections we almost missed reveal that you are not an isolated individual struggling through life with only your personal resources. You are connected through multiple channels, biological, genetic, quantum, and conscious, to a vast network of wisdom and support that includes not only your contemporaries, but potentially all the humans who have ever lived and learned and loved their way through the challenges of existence on this remarkable planet. As we drift deeper into the contemplative space where insights crystallize like dewdrops forming on quiet leaves, we begin to sense how the wisdom preserved by your Stone Age ancestors might illuminate pathways forward for human understanding that we've only begun to explore. The scientific revolution that began 400 years ago achieved remarkable success by studying nature from the outside, treating natural phenomena as objects to be analyzed through controlled experiments and mathematical models. But your ancestors developed a different approach to understanding. They learned by becoming deeply embedded within natural systems, participating directly in the patterns they sought to comprehend. This participatory approach to knowledge may represent the future direction of scientific inquiry. Recent developments in fields like ecology, neuroscience, and quantum physics are revealing that the observer and the observed are not separate entities, but parts of interconnected systems where consciousness itself plays a fundamental role in shaping the phenomena being studied. Your Stone Age ancestors intuitively understood what quantum physicists are now discovering. that consciousness and physical reality are intimately connected through processes that operate at the most fundamental levels of nature. They developed technologies and survival strategies based on this understanding, creating tools and communities that worked in harmony with natural systems rather than attempting to dominate them. Modern biomimicry, the science of learning from natural designs, is rediscovering principles that your ancestors applied thousands of years ago. They created materials, structures, and technologies by carefully observing how natural systems solve similar problems. Their arrows flew true because they understood aerodynamics through watching birds. Their shelters stayed warm because they learned insulation principles from observing animal fur and bird feathers. But they went beyond mere imitation to develop what we might call ecological intelligence, the ability to participate creatively in natural systems, contributing human innovation in ways that enhanced, rather than disrupted, ecological balance. This collaborative approach to technology may be essential for addressing the environmental challenges facing contemporary civilization. The future of science may require rediscovering the holistic awareness that your ancestors developed through generations of embedded participation in natural systems. Rather than studying isolated variables in controlled laboratories, future researchers might need to learn through direct engagement with the complex, interconnected systems they seek to understand. Recent advances in complexity science are revealing that many of the most important phenomena in nature consciousness, life, evolution, climate systems, emerge from the dynamic interactions between multiple components rather than from the properties of individual parts. Understanding these emergent phenomena requires forms of participatory awareness that your Stone Age ancestors developed naturally through their survival practices. The collective intelligence that allowed Stone Age communities to survive and thrive through major environmental changes may also point toward new forms of scientific collaboration. Rather than relying primarily on individual genius or competitive research programs, future science might benefit from developing collective intelligence networks where insights can emerge from the coordinated wisdom of entire research communities. Your ancestors demonstrated that small groups of humans, when properly connected and sharing knowledge freely, can develop solutions to challenges that would overwhelm individual intelligence. They survived ice ages, volcanic winters, and major climate changes by pooling their observations, testing multiple approaches simultaneously, and maintaining collective memory across generations. Contemporary citizen science projects are beginning to rediscover these collaborative approaches, engaging thousands of participants in data collection and analysis projects that would be impossible for individual researchers to undertake. But the future may hold even more sophisticated forms of collective intelligence, where human minds work together with artificial intelligence systems to explore questions that neither could address alone. The meditative awareness that your ancestors cultivated through their patient observation of natural patterns may also become increasingly important as science encounters questions that cannot be answered through conventional analytical approaches. Problems involving consciousness, meaning, value, and purpose may require forms of contemplative inquiry that integrate rational analysis with intuitive insight. Recent research on meditation and consciousness suggests that contemplative practices can enhance creativity, improve pattern recognition, and provide access to forms of information processing that operate below the threshold of ordinary conscious awareness. Your Stone Age ancestors were natural contemplatives, spending hours each day in states of relaxed attention that allowed them to perceive subtle patterns in their environment. The future of science may require rediscovering these contemplative capacities, not as alternatives to rigorous analysis, but as complementary approaches that can reveal aspects of reality that remain hidden when consciousness is contracted around narrow analytical focus. Perhaps most importantly, the wisdom traditions preserved by your Stone Age ancestors suggest that the ultimate purpose of knowledge is not just understanding, but wisdom, the ability to apply understanding in ways that benefit all life. They developed technologies and social practices that enhanced not just immediate human survival, but the long-term health of the ecological systems they inhabited. Future science may need to embrace this same commitment to wisdom as the ultimate goal of inquiry. Rather than pursuing knowledge for its own sake or for short-term practical applications, scientific research might increasingly focus on developing understanding that serves the well-being of human communities and the natural systems that support all life on Earth. The participatory, collaborative, contemplative, and wisdom-oriented approaches that sustained your Stone Age ancestors through hundreds of thousands of years of environmental change may be exactly the qualities that contemporary science needs to develop in order to address the challenges and opportunities of our rapidly changing world. As you settle deeper into the restorative awareness that allows insight and integration, you can sense how the ancient wisdom flowing through your genetic and cultural heritage might contribute to the emerging forms of understanding that humanity will need for navigating the future with skill, compassion, and ecological wisdom. In the deepest quiet of our journey together, where consciousness floats like mist at the border between waking and dreaming, we encounter the most profound mystery your Stone Age ancestors left us. The question of how consciousness itself emerged from the cosmic processes that built stars, planets, and eventually minds capable of contemplating their own existence. Your ancestors faced this mystery every night as they lay beneath stars, wondering about the nature of the awareness that allowed them to wonder. They developed creation stories, mythologies, and spiritual practices that attempted to understand the relationship between individual consciousness and the larger intelligence they sensed flowing through natural systems. Recent developments in neuroscience and consciousness research suggest that this ancient mystery remains as profound today as it was 200,000 years ago. Despite remarkable advances in understanding brain function, scientists still cannot explain how electrical and chemical activity in neural networks gives rise to subjective experience, the felt sense of being aware, the qualitative nature of seeing colors, feeling emotions, or contemplating abstract concepts. Some researchers now believe that consciousness might be a fundamental feature of the universe itself, present at every level, from quantum particles to galaxies, rather than something that emerges only in complex biological systems. This panpsychist perspective would mean that your Stone Age ancestors were correct in sensing awareness throughout the natural world. They weren't projecting human qualities onto inanimate objects, but recognizing consciousness as it actually exists at every scale of reality. If consciousness is indeed fundamental to the universe, then your ancestors' spiritual practices, their sense of kinship with animals and plants, their ceremonies honoring natural forces, their belief that landscapes and weather systems possessed forms of awareness might have been accurate perceptions of reality rather than primitive superstitions. Recent quantum physics experiments have revealed phenomena that seem to require consciousness for their proper description. Quantum systems appear to exist in multiple potential states simultaneously until they are observed, at which point they collapse into definite states. This suggests that consciousness might play a fundamental role in determining the nature of physical reality itself. Your Stone Age ancestors may have intuitively understood what quantum physicists are now discovering, that the act of conscious observation influences the phenomena being observed, that mind and matter are intimately interconnected at the most fundamental levels of reality, that individual consciousness participates in ongoing creation rather than simply observing a fixed, predetermined world. The mystery deepens when we consider the possibility that consciousness might be non-local, that individual awareness might be connected to larger fields of consciousness that operate beyond the boundaries of space and time. This would explain the seemingly telepathic abilities documented in traditional societies, the prophetic dreams that provide accurate information about distant events, the intuitive knowledge that allows people to navigate by internal guidance, that seems to transcend ordinary sensory input. Your ancestors developed technologies and survival strategies that seem to require access to information beyond what could be gathered through normal observation. They could predict weather changes before any physical signs appeared. They could locate resources in unfamiliar territories without maps or instruments. They could coordinate complex group activities across large areas without modern communication systems. If consciousness can indeed access information through non-local connections that operate beyond the constraints of physical space and time, then these abilities become natural expressions of capacities that remain latent in contemporary humans, suppressed by lifestyles that emphasize analytical thinking over intuitive awareness. The final mystery that your Stone Age ancestors confronted and that remains unsolved today is the question of what consciousness ultimately is and what it might become. If awareness is fundamental to the universe, if individual minds are connected to larger intelligence networks, if consciousness participates actively in shaping physical reality, then human evolution might not be primarily biological, but psychological and spiritual. Your ancestors may have been participating in the universe's process of becoming conscious of itself. Through their minds, the cosmos could observe its own beauty, contemplate its own patterns, and consciously guide its own continued development. Through their capacity for love, cooperation, and creative problem-solving, cosmic intelligence could express itself as care for future generations and responsibility for the well-being of all life. This suggests that the ultimate purpose of consciousness might not be individual survival or even species survival, but the universe's continuing evolution toward greater awareness, creativity, and love. Your Stone Age ancestors, in learning to survive through cooperation rather than competition, through observation rather than domination, through harmony rather than exploitation, may have been pioneering ways of living that align human consciousness with the fundamental creative processes of the cosmos itself. As you drift now toward the edge of sleep, where individual awareness begins to merge with the larger patterns of consciousness that operate beyond personal identity, you can sense this ancient mystery still unfolding. The same awareness that allowed your ancestors to navigate by stars, to find meaning in natural patterns, to maintain hope through impossible challenges. This awareness continues to evolve through you, carrying forward the cosmic process of consciousness, exploring its own infinite potential. The mystery remains unsolved not because we lack information, but because the answer is still being created through the choices we make, the love we express, the wisdom we develop, and the care we extend to future generations. Your Stone Age ancestors left us not a finished solution, but an ongoing invitation to participate consciously in the universe's continuing evolution toward greater awareness, compassion, and creative possibility. In the gentle space between waking and sleeping, you become part of this cosmic dreaming, where individual consciousness dissolves into the larger awareness that connects all beings across time and space, carrying forward the ancient wisdom that flows like an underground river through the collective memory of human experience, surfacing wherever it is needed to guide us toward futures bright with possibility and warm with love. Tonight, you have traveled through 200,000 years of human wisdom, uncovering the hidden connections that link you to ancestors who survived impossible odds through cooperation, observation, and love. You've discovered that your body carries biological wisdom from ice ages and climate changes, that your consciousness participates in intelligence networks that span generations, that your capacity for survival and creativity flows from sources deeper than individual knowledge. You've learned that the same neural pathways that allowed your Stone Age ancestors to read natural patterns, predict environmental changes, and maintain hope through catastrophic challenges are still functioning in your brain as you drift toward peaceful sleep. The resilience that carried humanity through volcanic winters and glacial periods lives on in your DNA, your microbiome, and your capacity for collective wisdom. Next time, we'll explore another incredible mystery: how the first civilizations learned to read the language of the stars, developing astronomical knowledge that connected human consciousness to cosmic cycles operating across millions of years, revealing secrets about time, space, and the nature of reality that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. If this journey through ancient wisdom brought you peace and wonder, subscribe for more cosmic storytelling that connects the deepest scientific discoveries to the practical wisdom that guides us toward rest, renewal, and conscious participation in the ongoing evolution of human consciousness. Sweet dreams carried on the same stars that guided your ancestors home across landscapes vast with possibility and bright with the promise that consciousness itself is still evolving, still learning, still discovering what it means to be aware in a universe infinite with mystery and warm with love.